Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our virtual college visit series. We're very excited to have Penn State University here with us today. And we have Mr. Eliel Acosta, one of the admission counselors from Penn State, is here to share information with us about their wonderful campus and university and everything they have to offer. So I'm going to hand this over to him and let him get started. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you, April. So everybody, like April said, my name is Eliel Acosta. I'm an admissions counselor here at Penn State University. Been with the university for about 5 years now. So this is the first year where we've done most of our recruiting from home. So hopefully if you guys are watching this at home, you get the same information that you would have if I would have been there in person. But I'm going to go ahead and start here. So Penn State University, very vibrant campus. We have 20 locations. University Park is the most popular one, and it's a lot of times the one that students know about, especially students from out of state. So we have a very vibrant student life. We have a lot of unique opportunities when it comes to academics and also clubs and activities. If you guys have Penn State alumni in your family, you might have heard the phrase "We are Penn State." So a lot of times, if you're a Penn State student or an alum, if you're walking around and someone shouts out "We are," you're supposed to yell back "Penn State." So again, kind of just a neat slogan with the university. But just a few kind of pointers I usually start off with is with Penn State, we are a top 1% world-class university, both academics and also when it comes to athletics. We were ranked 58 out of 18,000 colleges and universities across the globe in a lot of our STEM-related fields like engineering, the sciences, biology, and even business are nationally ranked in the top 10. Our student to faculty ratio is 16:1. So for a lot of students, this is kind of a hard number to put a reference point to. So just to give you guys an idea with Penn State University, like I mentioned before, we have 20 locations, University Park being the most popular and the biggest one. On that campus with University Park, for your freshman and sophomore year, you might have class sizes that are between 300 and 500 students, right? So it's a lecture hall. You will break down to smaller groups between 25 to 30 with a teacher assistant, but just be aware of that. Most students, when they transition from high school to a very large campus like University Park, they do fairly well. But I know for a lot of students, sometimes being on a large campus with a class size of 300 and 500 students might be a little bit too big. And I think one of the great things about Penn State is we have 20 locations. There's 19 other campuses that are a lot smaller than University Park. So if you want a small class size, then maybe I would suggest looking at those smaller campuses. But across the university, that 16:1 just means that for every 16 students, there's one professor. Our graduation rate and retention rate are both pretty high, both above the national average. If you guys Google graduation rate and retention rate, you're going to find those national averages. I think for graduation rate, the national average in the US is about a little bit above 60%. So it's good to see that at Penn State, we have 85% of our students finishing their degree with us. Our retention rate, and that means for freshmen. So freshmen coming into Penn State, right, those students that enjoy it enough, right, and succeed enough that they return is 93%. So again, that's above the national average for retention rate, I think just by 10%, but those are pretty good solid numbers to see. So kind of moving forward here, I know I've mentioned briefly the 20 campus system, and a lot of times for students that are coming from out of state, right, this can kind of be a new concept. And I'll try to kind of explain it to you the best way I can, but just be aware that there are 20 locations when you look at Penn State. Like I mentioned before, University Park, right in the middle of the state. You see that, the one labeled with little red house. That's the biggest campus. It has about 48,000 undergrad and grad students. It holds the entire 275 majors that we offer at Penn State. Division I athletics, if you're a student athlete and you're looking for D1 play, that would be University Park. Then every other blue dot you see, or every other little monopoly house that you see, is a Penn State campus. They're all going to range from size, but you do have some campuses that are small as 500 students and as big as 5,000 students. The average smaller Penn State campus is about 900 to 1,000 students. And you can find through our website exactly what the population size is for each campus if you're interested. But just so you guys are aware, you know, if you guys are coming from New York, maybe you want to look at some campuses that are a little bit closer to home, but you don't necessarily have to. When you look at this map, I've mentioned before, this monopoly houses. So the reason why some of them are orange and some of them are red, I'll start off with red ones, is that University Park and Penn State Barron, all the way up by Lake Erie, those two Penn State campuses require freshmen to live on campus for their first year, and they only guarantee housing for the freshman year. After that, if you want university-owned housing at University Park or Penn State Barron, it's more of a lottery-based system, so just be aware of that. The other campuses, those campuses in orange, that just means that we have university-owned housing, and it's guaranteed for the entire time that you're there. The ones are just plain blue dots are just Penn State campuses without university-owned housing. So sometimes those blue dot ones are probably not a good fit for an out-of-state student. I would probably suggest you guys look at the ones with a monopoly house. So when you guys look at Penn State, right, I know this kind of seem like a complex system. If you guys are seniors, or when it comes to time to apply, you guys will be choosing two campuses. You'll be choosing a first choice and a second choice. So most students, for the most part, are going to want to choose University Park as a first choice, right? No surprise there. And then they might choose another campus as a second option. So, you know, say they choose Mont Alto as a second option. When you apply, it's one application. It gets sent to us. We review you for your first choice of campus. If you get admitted, great, that'll be the end of that. But if you don't get admitted into your first choice, then we start looking at you for your second option. So kind of think about that piece there. Doesn't mean that you necessarily have to choose University Park as the first choice. Like I said before, we have students choosing the smaller Penn State campuses as a first choice as well. Now, for most majors, you can start at any Penn State campus. And for the most part, students partake in what we call a 2+2 program. That's when you do 2 years at one Penn State campus and then 2 years at another one. So historically and traditionally, students have done 2 years at a small Penn State campus and then they finish at University Park. So that's one option that you could do. It's an automatic transition, so you don't have to transfer. Your spot is essentially guaranteed at University Park as long as you're maintaining the GPA that your major is asking for and you're taking the right courses. Reasons why students might want to do that 2+2 plan, right? Apart from maybe being closer to home. I mentioned before the class size, so maybe you don't want to be sitting in an English course during your freshman year of 500 students, and maybe look at a smaller campus. So class size could be another reason. Athletics, so if you're not going to be playing Division I, but you still want to compete, the smaller campuses partake in what we call a Penn State University Athletic Conference. It's similar to a D3 level play. We compete against one another in other D3 schools. So sometimes student athletes will choose to start at a smaller campus. And then the last piece is cost, which I'll talk about in a bit. But there is about $12,000 gap between University Park and the smaller Penn State campuses. But I'll kind of move forward from there. And I've mentioned before, Penn State has 275 academic majors, over 185 minors, so pretty much cover everything that you guys can think of when it comes to choosing a major. You guys can also come undecided, so don't feel pressured to pick out a major during your senior year of high school. Most college students end up changing their major. So, just come in with an open mind. But obviously, if you have a career goal in mind already, it's perfectly fine to choose that major when you apply. When you apply to Penn State, you are applying into academic colleges or academic departments. So I'll use, for example, electrical engineering as an example. When you apply to electrical engineering, you apply to the College of Engineering with your intended major being electrical engineering. If you get admitted, you're admitted into what we call our pre-major status. And when you come in as a freshman, you will get an advisor who's going to work with you to make sure that you're taking the right courses, that you're aware of the GPA that that major requires. And then as long as you meet those requirements by the end of sophomore year, you would officially be in that major. Another tip here before we move on is if you guys are looking at any STEM related field, and I'm also going to include business there as well, just make sure that you have taken a half unit of trig in high school. You could have it scheduled during your senior year, that's fine as well. But Penn State does look for a half unit of trig when we review applications for STEM fields and also the business programs. If you don't have a half unit of trig, it's perfectly fine. What I would encourage you to do is then come undecided, pick up that the missing math unit that you need, and then you would just switch your major. So kind of moving on from there, undergraduate research, Penn State is a research university. We're a top tier research university. We pour over $900 million per year. And this is available to all students, regardless of major and regardless of campus. Obviously, some majors are going to be more friendlier to research, right, compared to others, right? So if you're an accounting major, right, you're probably not going to be looking for research opportunities. But just be aware, typically for every major, there are those chances for you to get hands-on experience. We also have a really good career office. So a lot of our programs require you to complete an internship by the end of junior year. So we can connect you to a lot of great employers. So just, again, be aware of that. The other thing that I have here is study abroad. So I know currently right now study abroad is kind of on a pause, but hopefully when you guys come into Penn State and start your college career, study abroad will open up again. But traditionally we have about 300 programs over 52 countries. So we pretty much can get you anywhere that you want to be. The key thing is for you guys just to plan early if you're thinking about doing study abroad, right? You don't want to wait until junior or senior year of college to decide you want to do study abroad because it can kind of impact, graduating within 4 years. So just plan ahead. A lot of programs do have kind of a built-in study abroad component as an option. So for example, architectural design is a 5-year program with your last year being in Rome. But again, I encourage you guys to look into that. It doesn't have to be a whole semester or even a whole year. Study abroad can look in many different ways. It can be a few weeks, maybe during the summer, right? So we can make it work with your academic major. The other thing that I have here is the honors program. So honors can be very popular for a lot of students looking at Penn State. It is competitive to get into. It's almost equivalent to applying to an Ivy League school. But there are a lot of perks if you get into our honors program. You get a $5,000 scholarship per year that you're in the program. You get smaller class sizes at University Park for your honor courses. There's separate housing available for honors students for the entire 4 years. You will have to complete a thesis by the end of senior year, which should not be really much of a surprise there. And then the big one, in my personal opinion, is being able to schedule your classes first. So you guys will find out sooner than later that when you're in college, taking your courses first, it is a big deal. So if this is something you're interested in, you can send me an email and I'll include my email here at the end of the presentation, but it is a separate application. We do ask you to write a few essay questions. We will look at your high school GPA. We do not look at your SAT or ACT exam score for the honors program. And then if you apply early enough, there is an optional interview that you can do with an alum. So again, send me an email if you guys are interested and I can get you in contact with someone from that program. And you guys can start that honors program at any campus, but you do have to finish at University Park. So just be aware of that. So next slide I have here is diversity with Penn State. So I know when I was in high school, back in 2010, diversity I think was just starting to become an important factor for a lot of students. I know it was something that I kind of looked at, but it wasn't really a big component when I was a senior. But I know for a lot of students, this can be a big piece. And every college, every university has to report diversity data, right? So if you guys want the entire data, let me know and I can send that to you. But just so you guys are aware, obviously there's plenty of different type of clubs that you can get involved with. So for example, there's a Latinx club, there's a Black Student Union club, multicultural club, international student club, right? List goes on and on. So if that's something that you want to get involved with while you're in college, seek out those opportunities. We also offer a lot of cultural activities throughout the semester where any Penn State student can attend. There have been some initiatives since this past summer by President Barron, who's the president of Penn State University. One of them is including a diversity freshman seminar course for every incoming freshman. We're looking at the student code of conduct, right? And then also, trying to increase our diversity when it comes to staff and faculty. So be aware of that. If you guys have any questions, we have a really great office called the Multicultural Office at University Park that provides really a lot of great prospective student events, but they also provide a lot of great resources for our current students. So moving from there, apart from those clubs and activities, there's 1,200 clubs at Penn State, so there's a lot of ways that you guys can get involved. I know when I came into the university, there was a joke in the admissions office that there was a club at University Park called Bob, right? So for students whose first name was Bob or Robert, they could join. I never really found out if that was true or not, but I think it just kind of shows you the breadth of options that you have at Penn State. Obviously there's major-based clubs, right? So if you wanted to join a club based on your major, you could definitely do that. There's interest-based, right? So if you like hiking, swimming, right? Fishing, right? Harry Potter, those kind of things. There's different ways you can get plugged in that way. Our big one, which is kind of the background photo that you see here, is what we call Thon. So every year we raise funds to donate for childhood cancer that goes into research, into care. We typically hit about $10 billion per year, and this is purely run by students. Every campus participates in it, and they compete against one another in terms of who can fundraise more. But the event kind of just ends with a big dance-a-thon for 48 hours at the Bryce Jordan Center at University Park. Again, I know this year it's not something that we're going to be able to do, but hopefully moving forward, once the conditions are right, it's something that we can continue doing with our students. So I'm going to talk about next steps here when it comes to applying to Penn State University. We are on the Common App. We're also on the Coalition app, and then we also have our own Penn State application. So you're going to want to make sure you fill out an online app. And if you guys are listening or here with me today to this presentation, I can waive your application fee of $65 before you apply to Penn State. So if you're interested in a fee waiver, just send me an email before you submit the application. And I can get a fee waiver for Common App and also through our Penn State app as well. So just be aware of that. That's the online application. Something a little bit different from Penn State. I know a lot of other Big Ten schools participate in it, is what we call a self-reported academic record, or SRAR for short. This essentially replaces the need of a high school transcript. So we actually do not need a physical copy of your high school transcript when you apply to Penn State, just because essentially what you're going to be doing is reporting all that data onto this portion of the SRAR. It does take about 40 minutes to complete, so I encourage you to get a copy of your high school transcript and just make sure it looks exactly the same when you're filling out this portion. The other thing that I have here is SAT or ACT. So we are test optional for the summer and fall of 2021. So for my seniors here, you guys have the option to whether or not to include your SAT or ACT exam score. That's totally up to you. This has been kind of a response to the pandemic that we are in. So you're not going to be penalized in any shape or form if you decide to opt out. We want to make this as easy as possible for you. So, honestly, if you haven't had a chance to take an SAT and you're a senior currently, I would really encourage you to look into maybe just opting out of the SAT. For my underclassmen who are here with me today, those who are juniors, maybe sophomores, freshmen, Penn State has not announced yet on how we're going to be moving forward after the fall of 2021 when it comes to being test optional. So just plan for right now to need the SAT, but you should be hearing about that decision fairly soon. The last piece I have here is the My Penn State profile account. Is something that you're going to be prompted to create, whether you apply through our application or the Common App. It's essentially a portal for Penn State. Here is where we're going to communicate with you if we're missing anything, if there's any issues. We also will communicate with you through here our decision. You can schedule virtual visits for right now and hopefully in-person visits in the future through this portal account. So just be aware of that. So when it comes to eligibility, and just if you want kind of to see some numbers here, right? This is the middle 50% range when it comes to GPA and SAT based on last year's class. So for University Park, like I mentioned before, it's a little bit more competitive to get into, and that's just because a lot of our students or a lot of prospective students want to be at University Park, so it makes it more competitive. But you're looking between a 3.5 to a 3.9. SAT of 12 to 1400. And then for the smaller campuses, you're looking at a 3.0 to a 3.6 and an SAT of 1000 to 1200. Again, this is just the middle 50% range, so it does not mean that if you do not have a 3.5, you're not going to get into University Park. We had 25% of students below a 3.5 and 25% of students above that 3.9, so just be aware of that. You can find this on our website where you can hit pause right when you're listening to this video if you kind of just want to save it. Timeline-wise, so for my seniors here, the application went live on August 1st of your senior year. The deadline was actually pushed to November 15th. So I know it says November 1st on my slide here, but for my seniors, it was November 15th, which was this past Sunday. We are rolling in admissions though, so if you are still interested in applying to Penn State, I would strongly encourage you to submit an application within next week. The more you wait, the more competitive it's going to get. So again, I would encourage you all to apply as soon as possible. And then for my underclassmen here, just be aware of these dates when it comes for senior year. For those of you who did apply for early action before November 15th, you should hear back from us before the end of December. The other thing that you want to keep in mind is FAFSA, right? You want to make sure you're completing that FAFSA for Penn State. Goes live on October 1st of senior year, but we want it to be sent to us before December 1st. So again, just be aware of that. As long as you meet all these deadlines, but especially the FAFSA deadline, you're going to be automatically considered for any scholarship opportunities with us. So there's not a separate scholarship application with Penn State. We automatically look at your application of admissions and then also your FAFSA, and then we review you based on that data. So just try to get that into us. And then typically around the end of February, you'll get what we call a student aid summary from us. And at that point, we'll say, hey, this is the tuition for Penn State and fees. This is room and board, and these are the scholarships, grants that you've received, and loans that you're eligible to take out. So you might want to wait until you get a student aid summary from Penn State to make a decision. And you guys have until May 1st of senior year to accept your offer. And that May 1st deadline is typically true for every college. So if you guys are planning to wait to see what colleges are going to be offering for you, right, you have until that May 1st deadline to accept your offer. So I'm going to talk about cost here for out-of-state students. I know I mentioned earlier in the presentation that University Park is more expensive. So University Park, with your tuition, fees, your dorm, and your meal plan, right, that's what room and meals is. The total per year that you're going to be looking at is approximately $47,000. For the smaller campuses, you're looking at $34,000, right? So there's a $12,000 gap there. So again, that's why I encourage you guys to really explore that 2+2. You can save $24,000. And this is before you get any type of aid from us. There is also a very new scholarship with us. This is actually our second year doing it. It's what we call a Discover Penn State Scholarship. So the Discover Penn State Scholarship allows an incoming freshman or even also a transfer student who chooses to start at a Commonwealth campus, so any campus other than University Park, to potentially receive a scholarship of $6,000 per year that they're at that Commonwealth campus. So if you decide to do that 2+2, you would subtract 6,000 from 34,000, and that's a very close estimate cost of what you would be looking at. There isn't really much of a merit or need based. It's more of a deadline when it comes to the Discover Penn State Award. So I really encourage you guys to submit your application on time, submit your FAFSA, and we're going to be reviewing students automatically as they apply to the smaller campuses for this Discover Penn State Award. And I forgot to mention here briefly is that this award is specifically for out-of-state students who are coming from a state that borders Pennsylvania. So that would include your state of Virginia. So keep that in mind. And I know Virginia doesn't border PA, but we did throw Virginia and DC in that list of students who would be available. So if you guys have any questions about the Discover Penn State Award, feel free to send me an email as well. So just to kind of wrap it up here, Penn State brand recognition, right? So I think that's one of the great things about the university. Everywhere you go, people are going to recognize Penn State, and actually outside of Pennsylvania, most Penn State alums live in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So you guys might already know Penn State or former Penn State students. We also have a really strong career service office, ranked number 9. And one of the reasons why we have such a strong career office is because of our alumni network. So we have the largest alumni network in the world. We have over 800 or 700,000 active former Penn State students. And I know with the admissions office, last year we did a survey to see if students really understood what the word alumni meant. And we found that a lot of students don't really know what that actually translates over to. So just to kind of break it down to you guys, obviously those are former Penn State students, right? These are former Penn State students who are either in their careers or maybe in grad school, and they stay connected with the university. So that allows us to offer our current Penn State students a lot of great resources when it comes to internships, job opportunities. So again, just kind of keep that in the back of your head. And then the last piece that I have here is kind of something new that Penn State is doing, is what we call innovation entrepreneurship. I know every year, every campus has a competition that's called Lions Tank, similar to Shark Tank, where students can compete if they have a business proposal. You don't have to be a business student. We've had students in STEM come in and compete and win. If you win, there are funds that we would award you to get your startup started, right? But that essentially concludes my presentation. If you made it this far, thank you. Again, my name is Eliel Acosta. I work in the admissions office, and my email address is eaa16@psu.edu. And I'm sure you guys can reach out to your counseling office and they can give you my contact information as well. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that information. And yes, I'll post your email address with the video as I'm sending it out so that the students will have that as well. And it's really interesting, the different campuses and how that works with them applying, that they can list a second campus. So thank you for explaining that to us, because that's really helpful.
Yeah, were there any questions that you guys had or
So
that you think students might have?
Yeah, one question about the scholarship. So after early action, you said it's rolling deadline.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a certain cutoff date that you would have for considering a student for a scholarship?
Not necessarily, but I would encourage them to apply at least before November 30th.
Okay, so November 30th. So around the time the FAFSA is due,
right.
November 1st. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it becomes a lot more complicated if they wait until the spring semester.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you. That's great to know.
yeah, no problem.
I really appreciate your time with us today, and I'm sure our students will be reaching out to you with questions, and we will keep in contact and reach out if we have any questions from counseling as well.
Okay, that sounds good.
All
Thank
right,
you,
thank
guys.
you. Have a good
Bye.
day.
You too.